Success is walking from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. There's a lot of things that we can, that can be labeled as failure. Like, that's the thing. The language is all commentary. Like, you can put words in different situations. In my daily life, anything that feels like it's trying to go against, my intended outcome, I can't ultimately just kind of sit and think back, like, okay, what is this situation really? And how would I want to respond if this was on a larger scale?
At work, anytime I feel like the world is collapsing on top of me, I know my vision is too narrow. So I look outside the window. I just look as far as I can. It almost feels like a release. You're just like, oh, there's a whole entire world outside of the craziness that's going on in here. So I'm good. Guys, stress and fear are signals, not stop signs.
Dollar-backed stable coins. So making stable coins backed by, our cash, right? Which our stable coin is just a 1-to-1. So you give your dollar for one stable coin and its equivalent.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the In Full Bloom Show, the place where personal growth intersects with the dynamic world of trading and finance. My name is Quentin Gulliford, along with my business partner and co-host, Marcus Williams. And let me tell you something that I heard Jim Rohn say once or twice. We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. That, my friends, is resilience in a nutshell. The main topic of our episode today. Now, you and I both know how life has a very funny way of throwing curveballs at us. Markets surge and plummets, go up and down, opportunities come and go, and sometimes our biggest battles are the ones we fight in our own minds. You're not alone. I'm not alone. We are all like this. But here's the beautiful part. Who you become in the process is far more important than any single win or loss. Today's episode is all about resilience in the face of uncertainty and thriving through tough times. We'll dive deep into how you can transform setbacks into stepping stones and cultivate the kind of mindset that not only weathers the storm, but grows stronger because of it. Stay with me. Here's a little preview of what's to come. In our first segment, Market Pulse, Marcus and I are going to deep dive into the crypto space and the rise of digital assets into everyday life. Very fascinating topic for both Marcus and I right now, and should be for you as well, as you will find out here in a sec. In our main segment, our In Full Bloom segment, we're going to really get into the psychology of resilience, and not just get into the psychology, but we're going to get into actionable protocols you can implement in your life today to make you a more resilient human being that stands up in the face of failure or resistance. And like I said, as we move from our In Full Bloom segment and we go into our tools of the trade segment, we're going to talk about practical habits and routines you can implement to steel your nerves. Steel, not as in take, but steel as in metal. We're going to turn your nerves into metal and sharpen your focus to the protocols we talk about today. And then, of course, we're going to get into our own market sentiment. Certain things Marcus and I have been looking at in the market over the last couple weeks since our past episode. And then, of course, we're going to conclude today's episode with our Bloom principle of the episode. And our mantra of this week is your results are constantly under construction, a concept Bob Proctor teaches us. And we're going to tap into that spirit of Bob Proctor to spark that fire in your soul, reminding you that every challenge is simply another brick laid on the path of your destiny. Remember, guys, I'm going to channel my inner Jim Rohn here. I love how charismatic he is. I won't be able to get to his level quite yet. One day I will. But here we go. Guys, remember, the strongest oak tree isn't the one shielded from the storm. It's the one that stands firm in the place of raging winds. By the end of this episode, you'll have the insights, the conviction, and the protocols to face uncertainty head on and come out better than you were before. So grab a seat, grab a coffee, grab whatever fuels you and your focus. And let's get started on building the kind of resilience that not only survives tough times, but turns them into triumphant milestones. Here we go, Marcus. We're back here for another episode. We're going to get into our market pulse, and I'm sure you'll love this initial market pulse section. But ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Marcus to the episode today.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, let's just give it up for that intro because, man.
Messy, as they say in the French land. But here we go. We're not going to waste too much time here. We're going to get into our market pulse. And so like I mentioned in the intro, this week's edition of Market Pulse, we're going to talk about quick updates, as always, and our thoughts on the factors shaping our financial world. This is what this segment is for. And today, again, we're going to focus on digital assets, a sector that's been a roller coaster of highs and lows and a real test of resilience for many investors, including Marcus and I. So I'm going to give us a brief on the current state of cryptocurrency and determine the trajectory of our crypto conversation here. Cryptocurrencies have come a very, very long way since the days when Bitcoin was dismissed as a fringe obsession for tech enthusiasts. Today, digital assets are at the center, the core of a global conversation about the future of money, technology, and society as a whole. Yes, you heard that right. These virtual currencies are no longer just speculative tools. They're becoming integral to how businesses operate and individuals manage finances. Major institutions from hedge funds to payment service providers have poured in resources betting on crypto's potential to redefine commerce and investment. At the same time, governments, including the US government, as Marcus will allude to here in a sec, worldwide are stepping up with regulatory frameworks aimed at bringing structure to an industry known for its dramatic price swings and fast-paced innovation. For everyday individuals like you and I, the value of cryptocurrencies extends beyond the thrill and risk of market volatility. It's about a technology that could streamline cross-border transactions, redefine personal finance, and open up financial services to the unbanked. It's about witnessing the birth of a new paradigm, potentially. Decentralized systems that challenge traditional, centralized institutions. Yet this rapid growth comes with questions, of course, about security, stability, and the role of regulators in safeguarding public interests while not stifling innovation. And a delicate balancing act in how it's handled could shape our financial landscape for generations to come. And with so much at stake, guys, it's natural for people to wonder if they should jump in. Maybe you've thought about this, or hold back, or simply stay informed and stay on the sidelines. Whether you're a seasoned trader or a curious onlooker or someone just starting to educate themselves about digital assets, the truth in this sector continues to evolve at a breaknecking pace. That's exactly what makes it so fascinating and challenging to navigate. Marcus, how close are we to a reality where cryptocurrency transactions become as commonplace as swiping a credit card or using a mobile payment app? I pose that first question.
How close are we to cryptocurrency being basically integrated with our daily life?
I'm gonna pose a different. I'm gonna ask that question.
All right.
I was
gonna say I got a better. Just let that one soak.
I got a better initial question just to kick this crypto conversation off. In what ways could continued institutional adoption transform the landscape of digital assets? And maybe for our listeners, kind of bring to light just what the main conversation about crypto is in its adoption into everyday life.
Yeah, so that's a great place to start. It's really just the efficiency, the security, and the transparency. Like those three are the whole reason why, institutions would even consider it. Like governments would even consider it. Hedge funds would even consider it, because it's obviously going to solve a particular problem that they're having. And one of those problems on that institutional level is, and we know this firsthand when it comes to, trade, it's sending money, to and from not just people, but like governments and billions of dollars and millions of dollars worth of, funds that are being executed daily, but not finalized for weeks and months, right? I was listening to, I don't remember which video it was exactly, but he was referring to the fact that they have, and by they, the institutions, money sitting in particular accounts for transfer, knowing that it could be delayed. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like they're transferring from their main account when I'm talking about this. So,
by institutions, what do you mean? What do we mean by institutions?
Institutions, we can say like Apple, right? Google, Meta, those very large. I don't want to say corporate, because some of those institutions are private. So they're instead of being like, public offered companies, they're private companies. But then like hedge funds, you got, something like BlackRock, that's a, when I'm referring to institutions, let's just refer to it like this. Anytime you hear institutions, just think trillions, not trillions, but at least billions of dollars, billions of dollars.
Certainly. And guys, the conversation we're bringing up here is we're beyond the just mere ambiguity of crypto and, oh yeah, there was a Bitcoin boom a couple years ago, and yeah, people are still talking about Bitcoin, but we're trying to expand upon this conversation because institutions are expanding upon not just the conversation, but they're starting to adopt these digital assets into their functioning, their day-to-day functioning, their year-over-year, quarter-over-quarter functioning. Crypto is certainly, and Marcus and I will continue to articulate the best we can on this. Of course, we're still in research and trying to learn about this as much as the next person. But we're at I'll pose the Trump quote. Trump stated that he wants the United States to be the crypto capital of the world. That's what I'm looking at. And this is the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Why, Mark? Would it be important for the United States to do that?
Yeah.
What's Trump's interest in making the United States the crypto capital of the world? I'm really excited for this answer.
It's innovation, man. It just comes to the fact that we need to stay the dominant power. And I'm gonna stop saying too. So but no, seriously, it's the way that we can stay the dominant power. Of course, right now we're the dominant power because we have the reserve currency. That is really the only reason that
shout out Ray Dalio.
People are not people, but countries kind of, I'll say, play their role in a very light, and use that playing role lightly. And so yeah, when we think about right now, who really can. How are we in power besides the dollar? And when I think about that, we aren't. Like, there's nothing that's really holding us together besides the dollar, because all of our stuff, most of our products, like probably everything in this room, is imported from a China or a Canada or a Mexico, meaning that we're not producing our own products. And so the fact that countries have to trade and finalize the initial trade in the US dollar, right? When it comes to especially our imports and exports, that's given us an edge. And so when we think about the crypto capital of the world, first off, to go back to the first question, like, I think we're starting to realize, and not like we're starting to realize on a retail level, because institutions have known for a long time, at least, we'll say 5 to 7 years, right, of the problems it could solve. Not just the asset that it becomes, but the technology that the problem, the technology that solves the problems, right? And that's exactly where we're going. And I saw this video on Twitter the other day, or X. I'm sorry, I don't want to get in trouble for saying the wrong Elon, but no, it was some hedge fund manager. They sent $50 million in 30 seconds, like something that he said that would have taken weeks to finalize. And there's been, I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers before regarding just how much money in fees and transaction fees are lost from sending money and whatnot. So when we think about, like I said, just the constant involvement between countries, like their trade is going to be evident.
And I'm thinking of what just popped in my head is like Venmo, and just like make this as realistic for people as possible. If I'm sending Marcus a Venmo, I'm sending him $20. If Marcus wants to access that $20 right now, they're going to charge him a fee.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's for $20. Let's call it 50 cents.
Yeah.
But let's scale that $20 to 50 million. What does that transaction fee look like? No. And so let's conceptualize, guys, as you're listening to this. This is an issue that is, again, being adopted by institutions that are working with a lot of money, where for me, I'd be like, okay, me being charged a 50 cent transaction fee to get the $20 Marcus to send me, fine, I don't care. Let's do that. But if that's a couple $100,000, you might think otherwise, and you might look for, maybe there's another solution. Crypto that could kind of solve this. Marcus brought up the concept of world reserve currencies. Ray Dalio teaches us that whoever holds the world reserve currency is the dominant power. But as we look back in history, and I recommend you guys go look at our YouTube. I have a Macro Monday video discussing world reserve currencies and what that means, and a little bit more insight into what I'm about to talk about now. Going back to, and I won't even go that far, and I forget the years in which the Dutch were the dominant world power.
It's like 1651 or something like that.
Yep. And so that we'll start there. About 1651, the Dutch and the Dutch guilder, that was the currency, the Dutch currency, was the reserve currency. And so, like I said, 1-to-1 correlation, the Dutch were the world power. And due to a couple factors, which I'm going to get into in regards to the United States, which will speak to why the Dutch guilder is no longer the world power. So the Dutch guilder lost world power, lost world reserve currency. And then we have the British. And this is where history gets a little bit more familiar with me and anybody that's listening to this. When we're in school, in our history class, we don't go back that far necessarily, but we do learn a lot about the British Empire, decently enough, grade school level stuff. But speaking to why did the Dutch guilder, why did the British be overtaken as the world power? And I'm posing this question to you, listener. World reserve currencies, world powers get overtaken because they have a few very key issues. Issues in trade balance, debt, rising inflation, and internal instability. And so we'll just take a pause here. Take a pause. And let's be introspective to us as United States citizens. Trade balance, debt, government debt, that is, inflation, internal instability. If that's not ringing bells and whistles and flashing lights at you as the current state of the United States, then watch the news, read an article, get outside your bubble a little bit, because these are issues that the United States is facing right now. And so because we're facing these issues right now, we're very susceptible to overtake, just like the Dutch were, just like the British was. But so how do we hold on to that state of being the world reserve currency and the world dominant power? And you might think, okay, we're America. America's not going to be overtaken. Yeah. They thought that with the Dutch, and they thought that with the British. You can look at history, and it repeats itself. Since the dollar is no longer backed by anything, our currency is very weak in the sense that it's not backed by anything. And so all it takes is the right conditions, trade balance, debt, inflation, internal instability, for the United States, for the dominant world power to be overtaken. Hence, and this is, that was a lot of words to wrap around to why I think Trump is saying that he wants the United States to be the crypto capital of the world.
Yeah, I love that.
And the trajectory I could see, and I'm interested on your take here, Marcus. Then I'll let you go. I'll stop talking for a sec. Is having crypto-backed currency. And I'll just leave this one thing. Gold is an asset that is not in abundance in the sense that there's only a limited amount. In a sense, like there's a lot of gold relatively on Earth, and as we know, as Marcus and I know, countries over the last couple of years have been increasing their gold stores to large amounts. But crypto is, something that's exhaustible. Gold is something that there's a finite amount of, just like crypto, just like Bitcoin. And we won't go into the process of Bitcoin mining and what that looks like, but like you can't just make as much Bitcoin as you want. Like this is a very intricate process of computing, and you can only mine so much Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I had to bring up a number because we were talking earlier about the fees. Like you gave the example of $20, and you said 50 cents for the fee. So I just did $1.05, 5%. It's like 5%. On 50 million, that's 2.5 million. Like what?
I'm pissed.
So pissed. Yeah. If you could put 2.5 million back into your. Anyways, I just had to. I did that.
I appreciate it
because that was crazy. But no, I've had similar thoughts about the crypto backed currency, and I may be wrong on this. I'm 50-50 on it. But when it comes to crypto, like we essentially give that value. Like, so let's say everybody took their money out of crypto. All of their dollars, all of their yen, all of their euro, then crypto would essentially not have any liquidity at all. So I think the route is what I've been seeing are dollar-backed stable coins. So making the dollar, making stable coins backed by, our cash, right? Which our stable coin is just a 1-to-1. So you give your dollar for one stable coin and it's equivalent. But then having gold-backed crypto, that you bringing that up, because then the crypto is actually backed by something, and people's dollars are essentially backed by something, right?
So it's kind of like adding layers in a sense.
Yes. And the reason why I think that is because that keeps the dollar dominant. Like you've seen Trump's executive order about central bank digital currencies, right? Banning that in the US, meaning that any other like, let's say the Japan came out with their own digital currency, that would not be allowed for any business to use for exporting in the US, meaning that they couldn't get products from Japan, meaning that consumers in the US couldn't buy anything. Like, and it's just a whole freaking trickle effect. Every time I like start to say something like that, I think of Ray Dalio. That video he talks about is, the more people buy, the more somebody earns, and more somebody buys, and like just that cycle, which brings us to the government debt, and even thinking about that statistic we just brought up, like with the money that we may even owe in fees, like that have accumulated our debt, could
in the
trim that trade deficit. And I did want to say too, it is government debt, but it's also our debt. Yeah. Like the consumer debt, because 100%. The banks loaned us the money. Where'd the banks get the money? They got it from, everything is just so connected. I would say that's one thing that I've been really fascinated by, bro. It's like seriously, just how connected the world is, and how instability really like in any country, in any like way or fashion, kind of starts to shake things up. But of course the dollar, like we hold the deck right now for sure. But it has getting a little slippery.
Yeah.
It's getting a little slippery.
Yeah. And, you know, Marcus and I, and we say this anytime we kind of bring any sort of political conversation into play. We have an economic point of view when it comes to politics, and we remain as bipartisan. I think I can speak for Marcus and I. We try and stay as bipartisan as possible, not just in our show, on the podcast, in front of people, but in our own lives.
Yeah.
Utilizing all kinds of resources, watching left media, right media, and everything in between. Stay as bipartisan as possible. So I just want to make that clear as we, you know, kind of talk about and bring up some of this stuff. How can our listeners, somebody listening to this, start to learn more, and what should kind of be their approach to crypto? Should they jump in, buy as much Bitcoin as they can? It'll cost them a lot of money, but just buy as much of HBAR. But what does that look like for the everyday person? How are you interacting with the crypto space?
Well, yeah, I'd definitely say, you know, you got to get in the Bloom community. You know, we talk about it a little bit in there right now. But, you know, I just had to throw that in there. But no, I would say the only reason why I'm so invested into it, and this is not like a short-term type of mindset, is because I can understand the scale, and I only can understand that because just done the research, you know. And so I mean, ChatGPT is AI is a great source to start. Like, I can't emphasize how easy it is. And I'm going to use the word easy, and I know how to differentiate easy and simple, but it's really easy to start learning about this. Like it, and you can put it into terms that you will be able to understand in that moment to be able to make a decision if you think you should put $100 in it. Whatever the case may be, I'll say when it comes to funding, like my approach is obviously only what I can and what I'm willing to risk to complete zero. And so that's with like anything when I'm doing investments or trading, like anything, just because I accept the risk. So if you feel like you may not want to accept the risk, then it's probably not for you. But you also have to be prepared to be on the other side of history for the people that did not take the risk. So it's kind of just something that I would want our listeners to sit with and think, okay, you know, we've seen the world changing a lot. We got freaking, you know, cars with no drivers in them. You're on the road, you're looking over, you're like, oh my God.
Every time I see one, it throws me off. Bro.
Yeah, and you got in Tempe, they got pizza delivery on like bicycles, and it's nobody, like it's just a robot. So if we can just get a bird's eye on how the world is changing, like really quickly, I think most of us can make the logical decision in understanding, okay, I should at least be prepared. It's kind of like the internet. Like, you know, I was only, what was that, like 08? Or was it earlier than that?
The internet boom?
The .com bubble?
The .com, let's see.
When did the internet come out? Yeah, I want to know that fact, because I want to know how old I was.
Yeah, because it was
during that time.
It was right around when we were born. It was 1995 to 2001.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking like, all right, yo, if I was around during that time, like this is kind of like the same. This is kind of like the same time, right? So I'm like, all right, if I was around during that time, and I've now experienced what the internet has become. Like people had crazy, and people had the same mindset about the internet. I'm like, okay, now I wasn't able to do it at that time. So I'm like, all right, so that's kind of what I've thought about with crypto too. I rather take the risk because we are on the side of history, of things literally changing before our eyes. I started, there's two things I want to bring up where I started to notice that, you know, I don't think the majority would have noticed if they weren't aware of like just that type of stuff. But when I saw arenas and most sporting events stopped taking cash. That was like one thing that I thought about. I'm like, okay, if these places aren't taking cash anymore, like it's just gonna be debit cards forever, then we went to Apple Pay, and now you got Tap to Pay. But even now, I can see cards not being essentially used, but that's another thing. But the second thing was when they freaking renamed the Staples Center. When they renamed the Staples Center to Crypto.com Arena, I said it's done. Like it's that we're going towards that. Now, I don't know how long it's gonna take. I don't know how big it's gonna be, because at that time I wasn't thinking on this scale. But yeah, I was like, yeah, this crypto stuff it's for real. Like it's gonna be here to stay if they've just renamed the freaking Staples Center, bro.
Yeah.
So
And I think anytime there's a bubble, the .com bubble, the social media bubble, the Bitcoin bubble, the shit happens, and then most people are like, man, that was crazy. I wish I was at the beginning. I wish I was a little bit more in tune with what was going on at the beginning stages. This is your call to start being informed, become informed, gain understanding. We're at a very interesting time in our history in the sense that things are going to change. And I think we all feel it in the internal instability, in the uncertainty. Bob Proctor, he says, if you get anything, if you gain anything, gain understanding. That couldn't be more prevalent, more important than right now. And that's what Marcus and I are doing with this podcast, with our business, with our Bloom Circle community and our platform. We want to get a community of people who are interested in being informed, in optimizing all the opportunities. There's going to be an abundance of opportunities for us to get filthy rich in the next decade. Like Margaret said, we don't know how long it's going to take. I say decade. Who knows how long it's going to take? I think it's going to happen just sooner than later, for the next decade, next 2 decades. But I think we can all agree on the fact that the world is going to look a lot different over the next 40 years. A lot different. So why not take the time right now to gain understanding, become informed, so you can so you can take advantage of all these opportunities that are gonna present themselves to us over the next years to decades.
Real quick, before we go on to the next segment, there's one thing about the time frame that I will say that we do know about, right? And it's so there's something called ISO 20022, right? That is the financial language that financial institutions have to be communicating between. That deadline is March 2025. Like that's pretty much the deadline. I've seen all the way from March 2025 to November of 2025 from different sources, but credible sources. You can assure that. So that's pretty much like you got now to act on it. Like
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, that's your market pulse for today. If you couldn't tell, Marcus and I are fascinated and excited about the future and potential of digital assets. Excuse me. They really can be, they are a beacon of innovation and potential in our society and in our future. So we'll move into our next segment here. The main segment of this episode. Welcome to our In Full Bloom segment of the episode, where we explore the core ideas that help us flourish no matter how hard the wind blows. Today, we're diving into the concept of resilience. What does resilience mean for you? So life rarely announces its storms. Like in the beginning of this episode, I prefaced my Jim Rohn impersonation I want to do. So I'm going to expand upon this storm and tree analogy here. And again, life rarely announces the storms it throws at us. One day your investment portfolio takes a nosedive. The next you're blindsided by a personal crisis. It's in these moments, guys, that you either crumble or rise. Truly. Today in this segment, in our conversation about resilience, we're drawing from Dr. Andrew Huberman's remarkable discussion with Jocko Willink former Navy SEAL, to give you powerful, actionable protocols that can help you handle stress and fear in real time while building discipline that lasts. This isn't about motivational fluff and jargon. It's about real science, real strategies, and real results. Take a second to think about what resilience means for you. We've all gone through hard times. Like I said, storms are rarely announced to us. I've been through countless storms. Mark has been through countless storms. But think about for yourself, again, the definition of resilience. What does it mean for you? So the protocols we're going to get into now, they truly matter. Having structured tools like the ones we're going to talk about now and the ones we talk about every single day in our Bloom VXT community and circle is to manage acute stress leading to better decision making. Marks and I will both agree our ability to make effective, timely, and correct decisions, particularly in the market. But guys, in our personal life is very, very important. Whether the markets are volatile, whether we're in a consolidation period, whether life is going perfect, that stressor, that storm is going to come. So we're going to build upon this science plus discipline / resilience conversation. Dr. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Andrew Huberman changed my life. When I found Dr. Huberman and his research, never forget, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex was the first concept that he talked about that just really, really touched me to my core and impacted me. And Dr. Huberman's research shows how physiological, so the way our body functions, physiology is the way our body works, and psychological, so our head techniques can quickly reset your internal state. Yes. And then Jocko Willink's concept, former Navy SEAL. So if you want to draw motivation or disciplinary protocols or anything of that nature, a Navy SEAL would be a really good resource. So I think hence why I have incorporated Jocko and his teachings into this episode here. But Jocko's concept of extreme ownership and disciplined habits ensures you build upon that calm foundation instead of sliding back into old patterns. Marks, before we get into actionable protocols, because I don't want to just talk about science jargon and just blurt out narrative. I want to talk about real protocols people can do every single day, and we'll continue the conversation from there. Resilience. What does resilience mean for you and your daily life and daily operations? How do you approach resilience when the storm comes?
Yeah, so I heard something the other day, and I think it put a lot of those type of words like resilience, perseverance, like all that type of stuff together, and said success is walking from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And so when I think about like in my daily life, there's a lot of things that we can, that can be labeled as failure. Like that's the thing. The language is all commentary. Like you can put words in different situations and and whatnot. So, so in my daily life, anything that feels like it's trying to go against my intended outcome, I can't ultimately just kind of sit and think back, like okay, what is this situation really, and how would I want to respond if this was on a larger scale? Because of course, we can think about how we want to respond when like the whole ship is sinking. But what we don't know is those little, bullet holes in the ship are also, which are the little events in our life, you know what I'm saying, that hit our ship, even though it's not just an iceberg per se, word to the Titanic. But like, the little things that try to attack our days and prevent us from becoming and staying in the gym, right? Maybe, it's just a number of things. But so I'll say that for me, just being able to, like I said, walk from moment to moment without losing enthusiasm, really, no matter what comes my way, just because you ultimately cannot prepare for it. in these. You can't prepare for the actual event. Right? You can prepare your mind, and that is where I've learned to win the game. Is preparing my mind, because I don't know what moment could come. Like I think about some pretty crazy things sometimes. Like, damn, like what if that happened? Like that would be pretty crazy. But just trying to like put myself in that position to be able to understand the proper response to keep moving forward. So what would you say? What would you say it is? Like how would you identify resilience? Because when I think of resilience, like I said, perseverance, right? Persistence, like that is that type of family. So how would you? What do you think?
When I think of resilience, I think of resistance. So why do we need to be resilient? Why do we have to persevere? Those qualities that Marcus just mentioned. It's because we faced resilience, and because we face resistance. And here I'm moving away from my Jim Rohn analogy of the storms and the tree and the wind. Fuck that. I'm gonna shoot it straight to you. The storm is resistance that we face every single day. I remember one of the biggest resistance I faced was 2019 to 2020, college basketball season. I was playing basketball up at Montana State University in fall camp. So fall camp for Division I basketball starts second week of September. And so you get going in camp. This was my sophomore year at Montana State, playing well, moving myself into top 6 in the rotation, moving in with the starters in practice, being lead guy in that second group. Anybody that plays basketball kind of know what that means. I won't break down basketball hoop jargon here. The week before the first game, I'm not sure if it was the practice before we left for Utah State. You were playing Utah State on the road. Utah State's a crazy atmosphere. A week before the game, I roll my ankle really, really bad in practice, grade 3 ankle sprain. And then so we get to Utah State. I try to go. I'm taped up, ankle braced, everything. I play 2 possessions. I turn the ball over. I was like, Coach.
Yeah.
Waving at Coach. Come on, Coach. It's just not going to go. It was a really bad ankle injury. And I'll preface that by saying I missed my entire senior year, almost my entire senior year of high school with ankle injuries. So I had the ankle injury. Don't play. Having 1 turnover. On the way back to Montana, on the bus ride back, we got Chick-fil-A before we hopped on the bus to take, it was probably 8-10 hour drive back to Montana. I get food poisoning on the bus from Chick-fil-A. Really, really bad. And so the entire 8 hours of our drive from Utah State to Bozeman, Montana, I was throwing up the entire time. Damn, and it was rough because everybody's on the bus, sleeping, laying down. So I make my way to the bathroom after throwing up literally on my seat. I'm like, this is bad. So I go in the bathroom. I literally just lay there, hunched over the toilet for 6 hours, just throwing up. And obviously at that point, there's no food to throw up. It's horrible.
That's the worst type.
It's horrible. So we get back to Bozeman. I don't want to make this story too long. We get back to Bozeman. I'm like, Coach, talk to my trainer. Like, I'm really sick. I got food poisoning. I was throwing up the whole trip. The next morning, I called the trainer. I'm like, Brett, this is not good. I feel horrible. I'm not sure if anything's wrong because I've had food poisoning before, but this is horrible. So I got no sleep that night. I go to drive to school. I black out at the wheel. On my way to school, I wrecked my car, wrecked the front end. The guy, let's just say he pressed charges on me because I ran into him. I floored into him and hit him. So I had to deal with that. And then I was sick for 5 days. I didn't eat anything for 5 days. I lost 30 pounds. And so losing 30 pounds, beginning of the season like that, fresh off an ankle injury, I was in no condition to play basketball. And so I essentially sat the bench. I moved from being in 1 through 6 role on the team to sitting the bench. And so it probably took me until about just before conference just to get healthy enough. when I was playing, I probably played around 195 and I got down to about 170. And so I work my way back in the rotation. Once I'm healthy, I lift, I eat, and I work and work and work, gain all my weight back over a short amount of time. And so when I'm finally healthy, coach still doesn't play me. Doesn't play me. Games pass. Doesn't play me. We get to conference. I'll never forget it. Portland State. Before the game, Coach Has comes up to me. He's like, "Q, coach he's gonna put you in." I'm like, "Man, finally get my shot." Finally, after months and months of rehab, getting myself back, and just being so upset that I'm not playing now that I'm healthy and did all this work. Yeah. Coach isn't playing me. What the fuck? I was literally in 1 through 5. Anyway, so I play at Portland State, play well, probably have 8 points, 5 or 6 rebounds, play well. Next game number 2, we play Eastern Washington. I play fantastic. I had about 15 points, 5 or 6 rebounds, handful of assists. And I get praised after the game, for my resilience going through the obstacles in which I had to go through to get back playing and get back healthy. And man, I'm on top of the world just because I feel so good about how I handled the situation. And now I'm back in the rotation, man. I'm good. And coach lets me know I'm starting the next game. I'm like, wow. Next practice, and I'll end the story after this. Then we'll go into protocols that will help you and have helped me through this process. Next practice after Eastern Washington. First drill, going, dribbling. Man, coach, I don't feel right. I don't feel right. Keep going, keep running, keep going. You're good. Make one. We're doing like a full court layup, just like introductory practice drill. So I get back around. I said that to Coach Russ. Not Russ Daniels. That was one of my teammates. Coach Russell. I said to Coach Russell, he was like, "You're good. Keep going. I get back to Coach Russell. I'm like, "Nah, Coach, I got to step up." And it proceeded to happen where I herniated 3 discs in my lower back, completely non-contact. And what I was feeling in the moment was just my entire leg going completely numb. So I go from being on top of the world to having 3 lower back herniations and being done for the year. After all that. So guys, when I talk about resiliency, I'm not alone in the sense that I've gone through things that have required me to be resilient. Marcus has gone through things. You've gone through things. But what we'll get into now are protocols I use, protocols you can use to stay resilient. No matter all the shit that happens, all the resistance that we face, all the turmoil we face, all the storms. Here, we'll get into things that we can do to bolster our resilience and go from having 3 back herniations and coach giving me a call on spring break, fresh off of disc herniations. This is right when COVID hit, so it's a crazy time for everybody. He says, "Q, you want to play next year, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, coach, I want to play as much as possible." That's probably not going to happen here. You should probably transfer. What's led me to Ottawa?
Yeah.
What's led me to Ottawa?
Everything happened for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't change a damn.
That's crazy though, bro. That sequence of events. So what was that a matter of? How many months was that a matter? 4?
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that was great. That was great. Great.
I just wanted to
listeners, for sure.
I need to get better at telling that story.
No, that was. Yeah.
I haven't told that story to a lot of people. For a very long time, I was very, very sensitive about it.
I hear you.
My life it was just a crazy, crazy year, and I struggled through a lot of those months. But here I motherfucking am.
Yeah,
and we're doing it.
No facts.
So how is it possible that we make this happen? How can we come out of the other side of resistance like that? And I'm sure there's resistance that's popping up in your head, listener, that you're thinking of. What can we do? So here we'll get into real-time stress and fear management protocols. Number 1, this is one of my favorite things from Dr. Huberman, and it's called the physiological sigh. A quick double inhale through the nose, followed by a slow, extended exhale through the mouth. Why does this work? The physiological sigh reduces blood CO2 levels, lowers heart rate, and signals safety to your nervous system, practically resetting your stress response mid-crisis. This is something I do very, 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 very often. And Marcus, you might be able to attest to this. Anytime something happens, anytime you have the stress response, that's what I'm getting at. Anytime you have the stress response, you feel it like in your chest, in your throat. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
If you just do a quick physiological sigh, it goes completely away.
Interesting.
It's phenomenal. It's crazy. And it just gets rid of that superficial stress response in the moment. So how do we use it? Again, I just prefaced it. Short inhale. Second, deeper inhale immediately. Exhale slowly, longer than both inhales combined. And repeat 1 to 3 times or until you feel calm. So that's protocol number 1.
I have to use that
We're going to give you. It's a phenomenal protocol. And I couldn't recommend it enough. This is something I do very, very, very often. Protocol number 2, we're going to talk about breathing a little bit. Mark, do you have any particular breathing tactics that you do?
I don't. You know, it's definitely something I feel like would calm me down though. Like, or get me into that meditative state. You know, because I mean, I feel like just listening to you do there's little things that send off that stress signal, like the littlest things where we have that feeling in it. So, but no, I don't. So I'm learning right now.
I'll bring to light the breathing technique of box breathing and variations of it. What's box breathing? Variation comes in the time allotment here. But for example, you'll inhale for 4 seconds, you'll hold for 4 seconds, and you'll exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. 4 sides to a box, equal amounts of time, equal sides for a square, hence box breathing. So you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. What does box breathing do? Box breathing stabilizes oxygen flow and heart rate, aligning the body's stress signals. So the physiological sigh is something where if in the moment you recognize you have a stress response, you want it to go away 1 to 3 times until you feel calm. For me, box breathing, and I don't exercise box breathing that much other than when I really have a very strong stress response and I really need to just sit down and relax for a sec. Box breathing is the protocol for that. When that stress response is very, very strong, the physiological sigh isn't quite getting it done. Sit down for 2-3 minutes and exercise your box breathing.
Do you use that when you're trading? The physiological?
I feel like my stress response isn't ever that triggered when I'm trading. Okay. To that extent. Of course, it gets triggered in some sense. I use it most now at work. Okay. For our listeners, I work at a very high volume restaurant and bar. So we get crazy. It gets crazy in there. If you ask any of my coworkers, I'm somebody that's very good at managing the chaos and being calm because of the physiological sigh. Anytime anything gets overwhelming, all right, I'm good. Yeah. I'll take 3, 4, 5 physiological sighs and I'm good. I'm ready to go. Yeah. Just quick, done, just like that. If it gets really crazy and I really just need to sit down for a second on my break, I'll do a little box breathing. Nothing crazy. I usually won't close my eyes or anything. Yeah. But I'll just regulate my oxygen levels, regulate my heart rate. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. And listeners, you do these protocols for yourself. It might seem like, oh, I've heard this before. Does this really work? They work. They do. If you don't trust me, look it up. Yeah. And if that's not enough, try it for yourself. If you don't want to try it for yourself, then you're not getting the concept of Bloom in the In Full Bloom podcast. Continuing, I'm just going to buzz through these protocols here because I want to stay as actionable as possible. The third protocol I have for you guys is visual reset. Visual reset is shifting your gaze from a close object like a screen to a distant point, or adopt what's called panoramic vision. So often we get so laser focused in our little bubble, in our environment. And again, I do this at work. Anytime I feel like the world is collapsing on top of me, I know my vision is too narrow. So I look outside the window. I just look as far as I can. It almost feels like a release. You're just like, oh, there's a whole entire world outside of the craziness that's going on in here. I'm good. And with this visual reset, I'll talk about a meditation practice I do. I used to do it every single day. Now I'll do it when I feel like I need it. And it really touches on this visual reset. So you either want to be more aware of things going on outside of your body or be more aware of what's going on inside of your body. So the practice I'm going to mention now, you slide along that spectrum between exteroception and interoception. So you close your eyes, and here I'm breathing, taking deep breaths, integrating physiological sighs as well. So it starts out, you close your eyes, again, I'm breathing here, and I'm drawing my perception to one point on my body. And usually I start with the point of my nose. And so I'll do 3 breaths or 3 physiological sighs with my eyes closed, drawing perception to my nose. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is opening up your eyes and drawing perception to something on your body. This is where I draw perception to my fingertips. So with my eyes open, I look at my fingertips and I draw perception to my fingertips. And when I'm saying draw perception to, if you think about your thumb, you can almost feel like your thumb buzzing in a way. That's drawing perception to something on your body. So I'll draw perception to my fingertips. And then then step number 3 is to look at something not on your body, but something that's I reckon 5 yards away from you. Breathe. Just staring at that point. Breathing. Step number 4 is to look at a distance, look at something a little bit further. So I'll say 100 yards away. Breathe. Just stare at one single point on that thing 100 yards away. Breathe. Add some physiological size in there. And then step number 5, for me, my favorite step. And I literally just look at the sky. I look as far as I can. Look into space. And I think in my head, I'm so small. There's so much going on in the world around me. My issues, what's going on in my life right now, means nothing in the sense that my problems are minuscule in respect to what's going on in the world. And then bam, I close my eyes again and I restart the process. And I do 3 cycles. Again, eyes closed, drawing perception to your nose, eyes open, drawing perception to your fingertips, looking off in the distance 5 yards away from you, looking off in the distance 100 yards away from you, and then opening up your perception and your exteroceptive perception, opening that up as much as possible. Again, we're visually resetting. You would be so surprised at how this relaxes your system and calms your sympathetic response and nervous system. Every 20 to 30 minutes, take about 30 seconds to just stare at something far away or soften your gaze. And this is kind of simplifying that meditation exercise I just walked through. If you ever get too narrow, if the world feels like it's collapsing on top of you, you're too focused on what's within close proximity to you. Open up your gaze, open up your eyes, become more exteroceptive, and you'd be very, very pleasantly surprised at how it will just completely calm your stress response, your fight or flight response.
It's really just, it speaks to how powerful, bro, what the brain is. Like, That's amazing. That type of stuff is I mean, it's like you said, the stuff you said before, I've heard before from you, but just to hear it again, and yeah, it's definitely something that we all should be incorporating. At least what? How often do you think you do that? Maybe twice a week, 3 times.
I
a
say
week?
2-3 times a week.
Yeah,
2-3 times a week. 2-3 times a week.
yeah. I mean, a week is long, and as we go in and out the week, maybe the first time you do it, you're focusing inward and in that introspective, and the second time you do it, maybe you're more focused externally. So no, I love that. That was that was great stuff there.
That's the Dr. Huberman inspiration of this episode. Now we'll get into the Jocko Willink inspiration of this episode. Jocko talks about taking extreme ownership of not just situations, but of your mindset. Extreme ownership, accept full responsibility for outcomes, eliminating blame. In the situation I brought you guys into in my personal life, this was the key for me. And it took me a really long time to do this. It probably took me 3 years to figure this out, to take extreme ownership over the situation that I was in and say, hey, this wasn't Coach Sprinkle's fault. He was just doing his job. There was ways in which I could improve. I need to take complete ownership over my situation, because I was in a really dark place, in the sense that initially I didn't want to. I was like, why am I at Ottawa? Why am I here, man? I was in a house living with 5 girls and my now ex-girlfriend, and it was miserable. My life was miserable. I was failing all my classes because I didn't want to go to school, and I got behind, so I didn't want to go and face my teachers because they would tell me about how far I am behind, and it was a very dark place. I got out of there because I decided to take extreme ownership over the situation that I was in. Once I did that, I did 4 semesters of 21 plus credits, and I got A's in every single class other than 4. And it's truly, truly a testament to just taking extreme full responsibility over your situation. When something goes wrong, markets drop, conflict, missed deadline, ask, what could I have done differently? Identify at least one concrete change to make next time. Document it, journal it, talk about it with somebody, or just be introspective and think deeply about it. Along the way, track your small wins, disciplined actions that align with your goals. Each morning, define 2 to 3 quote unquote wins you want by the end of the day. Check them off before bed to reinforce positive loops. These small wins become building blocks for larger discipline. In our last episode, we talked a lot about discipline. That was the main topic of that episode. Discipline and resilience are one and the same, in the sense that it's they're qualities that are required to operate at the frequency that we need to operate at in order to achieve everything we want to achieve. And so that's going to be it for the protocols. I'm going to give you guys all very, very, not just important protocols, but essential protocols, and establishing that resilience and discipline in your life. Actionable things that we can do today to make us more resilient human beings. Before reacting, use a physiological sigh or box breathing to neutralize panic. Adopt extreme ownership. Review your strategy. Own any mistakes. Adjust methodically. Journal. Log. In personal crisis, practice visual reset or box breathing again to gain emotional stability. And for your long-term plan, maintain a disciplined routine. Morning exercise, journaling, consistent sleep to sustain the resilience, because sustenance is very important. Guys, stress and fear are signals, not stop signs. I'm going to say that again. Stress and fear are signals, not stop signs. Reinterpret them as cues to implement your protocols, the protocols in which I walk you through in this episode. Do some research on other protocols if you find these ones don't work. But surely, guys, there's protocols out there that will allow you to recognize stress and fear, recognize the signal, and push through it. Push through the resistance. Discipline enhances freedom. A structured, accountable lifestyle frees you to adapt rapidly in unpredictable times. Utilize science, utilize good research, establish protocols in your own life, and become a more resilient person. Guys, resilience is more than just mental toughness. It's the systematic application of proven protocols. The next time you're rattled by a sudden drop in your portfolio or life hits you from complete left field, remember, breathe, own it, and stay consistent. Moving on from our main segment of this episode, I thought we did a really good job of bringing up some protocols that we can all use on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. That's really what I wanted to accomplish with this episode, with that segment. I wanted to give you guys actionable things you can use today to make you a more resilient person. So we'll move into our market sentiment spotlight segment. Marcus, I'm interested to hear your personal sentiment on the markets. In our last episode, you let our listeners know some of the stuff you're interested in trading, watching. How's the last trading week kind of transpired with some of the data that you've seen over the last couple week? Does maybe change your sentiment? Mm-hmm. Just bring our listener into some of your thoughts on the markets right now.
I would say since last time, my sentiment has become leaning more on the just still uncertainty. And that just continues to get validated. You know, there's something that just came out the other day when it comes to China, right? So Trump just put somebody in place that is the main focus is to basically limit the exports of stuff to China, mainly chips, like from Nvidia and like the main tech companies. And so when we think about like supply chain and then like global trade tensions, I just deem all that as just a uncertain time. Mm-hmm. And trade is, we know, one really big impact of the market, like any market. It doesn't matter if it's stocks or Forex, whatever. Trade, because trade is happening amongst all types of countries. And so that's, I've taken that and to me, that's a bird's eye type of impact. That's not necessarily going to impact my day to day, but it's something I'm extremely aware of when I'm on the chart. And then just economic indicators, news hit today. You had, PPI, you had CPI yesterday, and the differentiation between those two, CPI is, basically the, how much we are paying for goods and services. And then PPI is how much businesses and the producers, which is the PPI, are paying to produce those goods and services. And then we have labor market, which, we've showed some improvements in the limited amount of unemployment. But I have analyzed it in a way. It's just not always as cookie cutter as it seems. Like we know that, so we kind of just got to get integrated and see. Okay, if the labor market gets too hot, that can also cause more inflation. You know what I'm saying? So I've just been analyzing the balance between everything right now. This week I've had a pretty good week so far. When I think about it, I took a few L's today. Which definitely will happen, but risk management is king. It keeps us in the game. And then, of course, gold is kind of that, I can always fall back on gold, especially during an uncertain time. So that's kind of been my focuses over this last week.
Tracking economic indicators. You brought up some of the economic indicators a second ago. Mm-hmm. I'm really at a state where I want to hyper focus on the data that comes out on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Just continue to build my understanding of the ebbs and flows of how the markets react to this data when it is released. For anybody that wants to pay attention more to these economic indicators, this is what Marcus and I do every single day when we're trading. And information, and this is the information that we post in our Circle platform. Mm-hmm. So if you want to start becoming aware of what inflation's looking like, what the state of consumers are, what the state of producers are, what inflation's like right now, what's the state of the job market, Join our Bloom VXT community and you will become informed. Like Bob Proctor said, if you gain anything, gain understanding. You can gain understanding on the economy and these economic indicators within our community. So for me, continuing to build my sentiment on the market, in the economy, I watched a little bit of Fed Power the other day, and I've been watching a lot of just congressional meetings and hearings. From Fed Power, the economy is very strong right now. Labor market's good, data looks good. It's just this damn inflation that needs to come down. It's hovering around that 3%. The Fed has the goal of inflation being at 2%, so we're not there. And of course, this is what we feel every day as consumers. Inflation is a real thing. Something that impacts us every single day. So again, as I continue to build my sentiment, I'm really trying to just figure out how these economic indicators impact the markets in which I trade, so I can take advantage of every single opportunity that's presented to me in the market. Yeah, I think that's a very good way to approach it.
We joke about this, thinking about to where we did not have as focused approach to this, but now it's like we almost take more of an approach to that than like really the technicals, or we can say.
But yeah, just to build off that, my trading over the last week it's been very promising in the way I'm responding to the markets, my decision making. I have made errors, but errors in which I recognize immediately, which it hasn't always been like that. Errors I've made have been me mixing up my stop loss plan for the play I do. Maybe I used the stop loss I used for play number 2 on play number 1, and I just get kind of mumble jumbled a little bit, to use a little kid's term. Not very articulate of me. I apologize. But I've certainly made mistakes, but I'm very promised with the trajectory that I'm on. And again, you can follow me on Instagram, QTG Trades. Every single day, I'm posting every single day about my progress, my routine. I'm being as transparent as possible in my day-to-day operations and processes. So if you want to see what it's like to be a day trader, follow me on Instagram. Follow Marcus on Instagram. He does much of the same thing. But every single day we're building our sentiment, not the sentiment of Fed Powell, not the sentiment of Trump, not the sentiment of our mothers, not the sentiment of our fathers, our cousins, our brother, sister. We're building our own sentiment. And again, we do this every single day in our Bloom VXT community.
Yeah, I got to bring up something real quick, because Ray Dalio posted something yesterday. He had said, he said, thinking about sentiment, right? The market sentiment. So like when we see, if you're familiar with, so there's 2 sources that we use for news, like the actual news folder. There are multiple, but the actual folder. So as I mentioned, CPI earlier, to actually see the result of that, what time it comes out and everything. Forex Factory or MyFX book, right? And on there, it has like the forecast, right? And the forecast is essentially the sentiment, like the sentiment of the analyst that went in and got the data and made the forecast. And sometimes I would say like 75% of the time the forecast is wrong. Like it's just wrong. Like it's just crazy. But Ray Dalio said this yesterday. He said, in order to be a successful investor, one has to bet against the consensus and be right. Do you know how to do that? And when I saw it, I was like,
love that.
Oh yeah, like I'm in a good spot, because I rarely ever even not care, but flow with the consensus. Like I'm not just going against it just to go against it. If I line with it, I'm like, okay, I can see that. But if not, I'm just like, okay, this person or quote unquote government entity is just, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. 100. Now I laugh every single day, and sometimes when I'm trading, I'll throw on Bloomberg television, and it's just economic news. It's nothing crazy, but they'll have economists and specialists on there, and they're talking about this, talking about that, and I'm just listening. I'm like, I don't know. Well, you just can't take these people's word for it. In our first episode of this Info Bloom show, we talked about crowd behavior, and how you shouldn't just go with the crowd to go with the crowd. We talked about building our own sentiment, and the crowd might be right, the economists might be right, but a lot of the times they are not right. And it takes us building our own sentiment in order to do that. I really like that Ray Dalio.
Yeah. And it's not to like what we're saying right now is not to like undermine their credibility in the space. Like, cause I don't really know as far as that goes.
We still take what they say as information.
Yeah, exactly. It's just pure information. But ultimately we don't know where they got it. There's a few people that we do actually like Ray Dalio, for example, which right now when he's talking about, the market and whatnot, it just aligns right with what we're doing. But I didn't think he didn't want any economists to see this. Like, dang, I was firing shots at us. Like, no, that's not it. That's not it.
Yeah, certainly. Be you. Be your own person. Develop your own sentiment.
AI.
Man. 100%. So that'll conclude the bulk of this episode. But we can't leave an Info Bloom show episode without, of course, our Bloom principle of the week. Today's principle is your results are constantly under construction. This is something I pulled from Bob Proctor's book, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life. This is a truth that the late great Bob Proctor lived and breathed. He taught us that we're not stuck or defined by any single result because our capacity for growth is infinite. Imagine for a second a construction site. There's noise, dust, and unexpected complications, of course, but over time, the structure rises. The exact same thing is happening in your life day to day. Each setback or detour is not a failure. It's part of the blueprint being revised to create something even more magnificent. Every time you learn, every time you get back up, you're adding a new floor to the skyscraper of your potential. Bob Proctor reminded us that we come from perfection. I mentioned this in the last episode. The creative force that made the universe resides in us too. We are not broken. We are masterpieces in progress. When you recognize that your results are simply stepping stones to something greater, the fear of failure diminishes. You begin to realize that it's all part of the process, an ongoing, ever-evolving construction project. So if you feel like you've hit a wall, embrace it. We talked about resistance in this episode. Embrace that resistance because you are a resilient human being. That wall, that resistance is just the next phase of your build. You are literally under construction, upgrading, evolving, and elevating. The construction building analogy is about as realistic of an analogy in this case as an analogy could be. Trust that with resilience, belief, and action, you'll see that the next level takes form faster than you could ever imagine. Don't quit halfway through the build. Keep moving, keep constructing, keep shining. Because your results, like you, are a work of art in progress. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on this beautiful journey of learning and discussing resilience in the face of uncertainty. From market volatility to personal setbacks, the tools we've discussed today, grounded in science, discipline, and a growth mindset, will help you not just survive, but truly thrive through these tough and uncertain times. Marcus, do you have anything you want to leave our listeners with at the end of this episode?
No. You've left them with a lot of good stuff to go home and form, like you said, their own sentiment based on the market, form their own protocols, see what works for them. Definitely going to start incorporating that physiological side, and of course the box breathing. I think something I can definitely do the mornings of. I think, like I said, to get me in a meditative state, something I do struggle with. I tend to wander, so I just think that that'll help calm my mind as I'm trying to focus. I really liked the vision, the visual one that you were referring to. I often look at the sky a lot, and I feel that, like, what you're like. I feel that as I'm looking at the sky, I'm like, it's so big, it's so wide, and that always reminds me of the opportunities that we truly have, like just to look around and see just how big the world is. So, I just want to leave the listeners with this one thing, and it's the fact that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. You just have to decide to do it. So, if you don't have to know where to start, you just have to know that you want to start, and then figure out the steps from there. So this obviously, what we're talking about here did not come overnight. And we're still developing on it, still developing on it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got until next time.
And like Marcus and I are leaning into this Think and Go Rich concept. And as Marcus just touched on, all it takes is making a decision and then a burning desire to possess whatever it is. Again, listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Info Bloom Show. Until next time, remember, you are under continuous construction, and greatness awaits for you on the other side of every single challenge you face. Stay resilient. I'll see you in the next one.